This is JCB Live, Wine Style. We're so excited you can join us. I'm with the fantastic Brian Maloney, Director of Winemaking of not only the Loach, but the fantastic Buena Vista. Cheers. Cheers. Guess where we are, dear friends? We're in our favorite room.
We are blending today at the famous Rhône Vineyards and Cellars.
So what does blending mean? But more importantly, why are we wearing those fabulous, gorgeous, elegant uniforms? This is actually the new joint venture we have with Dolce & Gabbana, Yves Saint Laurent with a little sign of Gucci. So you don't realize, but we are in the fashion world here at Raymond. We created this amazing room that many of you have gone and come to actually blend. We've received over 100 sommeliers to craft the fantastic Raymond Sommelier Selection. This has been an iconic wine that many of you promote that is only on premise, and we're delighted this month to actually support and help all the people in the wine world, directors of wine and sommelier, through a great effort through sommelier selection. So it brings great energy, great vibes. As well, you need to realize that over 5,000 people blend on a yearly basis here at Raymond. This is quite amazing. This is one of the most sought after rooms when the wine country is going to reopen, where people come, blend, and learn about wine. What we're going to be doing today is exactly this, and why it's a fundamental part of winemaking, and specifically with consumers, because they come with a lot of preconceived ideas. We always do. We like Merlot, we don't like Merlot, we like Petit Syrah, we don't. The moment you start to play with every part to create something amazing, you realize that each of the components act towards something greater. And this is really cool to make as a Bordeaux style wine. It's not exactly what we'll be doing today. We'll be playing with other grape varieties. But first and foremost, Brian Maloney has been a very talented winemaker for over 17 years. He's been drinking wine for over 30 years, per his mom. And I'd like to ask Brian, how is it as a winemaker who's made spectacular Pinot, spectacular Chardonnay, from single vineyards, from one clone sometimes, how did it come about that you like blending?
Well, to me, blending is so fascinating because it's about the relationship between different varieties. And even though I started working with Pinot Noir very early on, what you find even with Pinot Noir is you need different flavors and different complementary tastes to work and make a superior wine. That's why in our own estate vineyards at the Loach, we have multiple clonal plantings, so that we have that opportunity to work with those complementary wines. And early on, working with you, John Charles, I was introduced to the wines of Lyeth. And Lyeth, from the very beginnings, was all about the art of the blend. And being able to help craft these wines over the last decade or so, we've really seen that extrapolate out into amazing wines that are much superior than if they were just crafted from one single variety, in my opinion.
Well, that's a very interesting discussion. Blending clones of one grape variety. That is what we do very well, very eloquently at the Loach, versus blending grape varieties. Before we go to Lyeth, tell us about the energy that there is in Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as far as the clones. Because at the Loach, we have a cocktail, a kaleidoscope of clones that are second to none in the heart of the Russian River. And how do you do that? Explain our friends, how does it work to blend those great clones from different blocks?
Well, it really comes down to just the history of Pinot Noir and its age, and the fact that it's evolved all across what is the ancient kingdom of Burgundy. And so you have different flavor profiles from those different clonal selections, and that really gives us clones such as 777, which has such dark, rich fruit, to complement and to contrast against other clones, such as the 115, which is much more spice and much more tannin, to the Swiss Clone 23, which is this great broad approach in the mouth, but not nearly the intensity you see from those Dijon selections. And so having each one of those grow within the vineyard itself, the same basic terroir we're pulling from gives us this kaleidoscope of flavors and these complementary elements. And I think that's what's really important to talk about with blends, is that we're looking at varieties that complement each other. Not ones that are all, big tannins or big fruit, but one that is lending more of that tannin structure that can complement those fruit elements or those spice elements from other varieties. And so at the Deloche estate, because we have planted to 8 different selections of Pinot Noir, we've been able to craft what we feel are some of the very best Pinot Noirs in all of California from that one estate.
I would say in all America.
Well,
why limit it to California?
I'm not really sure if Pinot Noir is grown outside of California.
Since last I checked, I don't even remember we go further north of California. This is for you, all our friends from Oregon, all the Burgundian people who moved to Oregon. You're going to come back south soon again, because you're going to realize that the Russian River is the best place.
Without a doubt.
So now, think about a bouquet of flowers. And I was explaining that to my daughters on Sunday. We've planted literally 14 varieties of red roses. And at first sight, they're all the same. But when you start to look at the size of the petal, the depth, how many petals each of them have, you realize you're talking about different variety. So what is beautiful in a bouquet is to create all those different origins of roses. We all know there's over 650 different kinds of roses today, as an example. So that was the idea of blending a clonal selection or different rootstocks attached to different clones. Now, Brian, tell us about this very iconic winery that was really the first one to basically bring Bordeaux to California.
Without a doubt. So the Lyeth estate, based out of the famous Alexander Valley in northern Sonoma County, really started out with this concept of trying to recreate the Bordeaux style blend. And so looking at those 5 great varieties coming out of Bordeaux. Of course, Cabernet Sauvignon being king, but just as important, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and then to a lesser extent, Petit Verdot and Malbec. Now, all of those varieties have very unique flavor personalities to them, and on their own often can be overwhelming in one direction or another. And that's where Lyeth really, I think, captured the magic of those Bordeaux wines very early on, was those complementary approaches in terms of a Bordeaux-style blend. So complementary and so famous that it really helped bring about the meritage, the whole entire category, a new name for this style of wine.
The merit of the heritage.
Yes.
And this is really what we do here at Raymond Vineyards in this amazing winemaker 4-day room, is you basically create your own blend. As you could see, we bring you an Haut Cabernet, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and then you get to play, you get to become the chef. You get to become the creator of your own alchemy. And that's really exciting. So, Brian, tell us about what came into this unbelievable vision of this California red blend. Well, this is this hell of a wine.
It is.
Wow.
Absolutely fantastic. And it's because we're looking at varieties, 2 in particular that come to the fore in this wine. One, the Petit Verdot, that Bordeaux variety, which gives you a lot of the kind of that center dark fruit characteristic to this wine, a lot of the body and depth, but then complementing it with Petit Syrah, which is in many ways now a California classic, and gives you a little bit more framing, a little bit more intensity. Both of them, though, lend to the incredibly dark color of this wine, and complement each other in a way that I think that either variety on its own.
Where's the color?
It might be inside.
Oh, my glass is empty
You'll
already.
have to fix that.
Oh, I love it so much. Thank you, Brian. It's all Petit Verdot, Petit Syrah, but it's a grand blend. And that's really exciting, because who in this world blend those 2 great varieties? I'm going to tell you there's virtually very little Petit Verdot left in the southwest of France in Bordeaux. And for that matter, the biggest planting around the world of Petit Verdot is probably in Napa Valley. So,
I think we found it to be a variety that is incredibly complementary to our terroir, our soil conditions, but as well as our weather. And so you do get the dark fruit character, which I think Bordeaux has a hard time capturing from Petit Verdot.
I'm a big fan of this wine. We have typically a great distribution of this wonderful wine in the restaurant. I totally understand why. This is a food wine. And at the same time, in retail, it should be doing very well because you pick a couple of bottles of that for your home entertainment. This is insane.
Oh, I mean, I think in my house we would go through maybe a bottle and a half a night.
Oh, that's good. And it's you and your children.
Well, yes, I mean, they are just starting.
Well, it needs to start as early as possible. Talking about that, one of my favorite wines of our portfolio, and I say that humbly because I think the biggest challenge in winemaking today is not to make $100, $200, $300 bottle of wine. It's actually making an amazing wine between $9 and $20.
Yes, without a doubt. The challenge is to make something this beautiful, though, is I can't imagine.
Well, tell us about this, because if we talk about Côtes du Rhône with a French accent, this is way too partial. I'd like someone more impartial to give us a true, honest American opinion.
Well, to me, this is about the two varieties in it, right? The Syrah and the Grenache. And, Syrah is something in the United States we've become much more familiar with, but I don't think we get the south of France as Côtes du Rhône style Syrah very often in California. Here you have beautiful fruit, and then you have that Grenache explosion of spice that comes out in the nose.
The complementarity of the both is magical. And as you said, when we think about California, 1920s, 1940s, a lot of Grenache, a lot of Syrah, easy grapes to grow, large yield, thick skins, beautiful juice, big output. That was great. Suddenly we moved away from those two grape varieties that we replanted, believe it or not, in France. So when you think about the south of France and all the great rosé we get, two ways to do it: saigné or commingling with skin, and we get the magical rosé from the south, including Provence, Grenache. Here, the ultimate combination. And this is really your entry-level Côtes du Rhône from Louis Bernard. Great winery, by the way, dear friends, started in 1976 by a great man, Mr. Bernard. It's done stupendously well in the southern Rhône. And I believe all of us should open our eyes to the south of Rhône. You know, Côtes du Rhône, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas, Vaqueras, Côtières de Nîmes, Côtes du Luberon. That whole region is magic. And what I like even the most about it, it's very complementary to what we do in the US.
Oh, I think without a doubt. And, if you get a chance to explore those, the Gigondas and Vaqueras and Châteauneuf-du-Pape, those are wines that put smiles on people's faces. And this, to me, is just a beautiful entry into that whole world of the Southern Rhône. It's a wine style that works so well in terms of not only being a food wine, which it definitely is.
Grilling, barbecuing, pizzas.
But also one of those wines you cook with, as in you drink and then you cook, because it is absolutely delicious. Lots of fruit, lots of texture, but also a brightness to it that makes you want to come back for that next sip.
I love it. Big fan of it as well. We wanted to go to screw cap, which makes it very easy. And I surprised myself last Saturday. Served it, put back in the ice, as we say in French, a little chambré, meaning a little cool. Phenomenal. And that's what you can allow yourself with a wine like this, a Côtes du Rhône. It's sustained, temperature variance, and it sustained as well a lot of spice. So I highly recommend, if you love Indian food, Thai food, if you are into pizzas and grilling.
Yeah, without a doubt.
We're entering the grilling season. Another wine, Brian, that is a bomb. Another wine that has stopped time. We need to pendulum the wine. And if I have a yes, we go for it. I have a yes! This wine is all about going back to time. It's all about the chronology of time. It's all about measuring time and giving time its timelessness. I hope it makes sense.
I hope
what
it's
is that?
Your glass.
Oh, let's do it, Brian! Each of the components of this wine are right here. And we wanted to show you this blending room because this is what we've done on this vintage. We were right here and allowing ourselves to play for hours and hours and hours and Brian is going to walk us through the blend. A blend like this, 0.5% of one component, it could be Syrah, Petite Syrah, would change the taste profile of the wine?
Well, I've loved this wine since its conception because really it gave us an opportunity to start all over again and look back to the history of California wines and make something that's greater than has ever been done before. And so we actually started off with looking at those classic Bordeaux components, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Petit Syrah. I'm sorry, not Petit Syrah, Cabernet Franc. But also looking at the Rhone varieties, the Syrahs, the Grenaches. And what we found on this was this complementary marriage between those two great growing regions of France, as well as just a touch of California.
And maybe, dear friends, a little confidence as we go into the chronology of time. Who is to say that no Bordeaux Chateau were not cheating a little bit with a little Syrah or Grenache coming from the south of France or the Rhone Valley? So what Brian has done here is, I think, a miraculous recipe that no one really dares to do, blending Bordeaux to Rhône, Rhône, Bordeaux. And I think the proof, that viscosity, look at the legs. Not my legs because you cannot see them. Brian shaved over today, so he looks very, very good. Oh.
Well, they say nothing is ever new again, and I think you're right. We definitely looked at what those histories of possible Bordeaux blends may have been.
It's unbelievable to think about each of those components. If you have them in your mind and you taste them independently as we have, that's where you think that those two bottles are basically in here.
Now, there is one secret component though, and that is a little touch of the Mission grape of California.
So tell us about Mission.
Well, it is the first grape that arrived in California back in the 1700s. So
with the Missions.
And we have the opportunity to work with the oldest vineyard in California, the Deaver Vineyard in the Sierra foothills, planted back in 1857. So these are not 100-year-old vines, these are 100 and almost 70-year-old vines. Absolutely ancient vines, and just a very small amount provides a little bit of structure and just a perfume to this wine. That is why we look at this little pipette. Incredibly important. That 0.5% Jean-Charles talked about, it makes all the difference in the world to this.
Look at this. Brian, let's toast with a pipette, because I think it would be a great way to depart. Now that you've said it, I feel the 3% of Mission grapes in this wine. So, dear friends, we traveled from the beautiful origin of the Alexander Valley with Lyeth Estate, this amazing California red blend. We went then to the Côtes du Rhône, a blend of Grenache and Syrah, and we finally finished with this incredible Secret Indulgence Chronology. So fun to be able to travel, to have such a great time, such enjoyment, such a palate orgasm in many ways with wine below $20. It's unusual to do this, but when we can, we do it! To the art of blending,